You're listening to PatchBay on tymkrs.
Welcome to PatchBay, conversational podcast all about audio equipment, music, audio engineering, recording, live sound, and our very busy couple of weeks here.
Yeah, no kidding. I've been really busy, and you've been on the road being a trucker, or some form of trucking anyway. So how was your trip?
It was pretty epic. It's like 2.5, 3 weeks on the road, covered a lot of states. The important part was more like I got to hang out with a lot of really, really genius people, and that's kind of the reason why we went. And I got to hang out with more people than I thought I was going to, and I got to have sort of back stage access to a lot of cool stuff. So, yeah.
That's nice. It's nice to bounce ideas off of people too, right? Like, because then you get little things start clicking in your brain as time goes on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. It sounds like it was a fun. So it was Parallax, was it?
Yeah, the apogee of the trip there is Parallax. They have a yearly thing in spring where the folks who do microcontrollers and electronics hackery sort of come together there and hang out for a day and a half. And then, but that's just like one day out of an epic journey, right?
Mhm. I was going to say, not that we're overusing the word epic, but A, you missed coming to Manitoba for epic nachos, and B, we need to know what the most epic burger was on the circular trip that you made.
Let's see. I think the best one we found was Patty's Kitchen in
Nice. Okay.
I think it was in Northern California.
Okay.
Just some random little town we pulled off, and there was like 10 locals hanging out there for lunch, and the wait staff was making fun of the locals, and the locals were fighting back. It was very, it was that kind of place. It was great.
I like those kinds of places. Is it Patty with an I or Patty with a Y?
Yeah, with an I.
With an I. Okay, I'll see if I can put that in the show notes in case anybody's in Northern California. I just finished up a session with a guy from Minot, North Dakota, and you said that you drove through the town. But
Maybe, I don't remember, but isn't that the place that had really bad flooding a couple years ago?
yeah, well, Grand Forks and last year, all of those towns. Minot got really hammered though because of the Red River, which ends up coming through Winnipeg as well. So this guy, he's a sort of Métis fiddler kind of guy, and I got a kind of interesting story about the session. But we went out for supper, and I sort of took him to the diner that I always kind of go to, and he ordered the sort of the epic burger there, and they call it's totally Canadian. They call it the Zamboni burger, which a Zamboni, if you don't know, is the ice cleaning machine between the between the periods. There's a guy that goes out and scrapes the ice and refloods the ice so that the ice is less beat up. Anyway, so the burger is bun, like 3/4 inch burger, piece of toasted garlic bread, another burger, 5 strips of bacon on top, and then another bun. And it's loaded fried onions, cheese, the whole. Oh my god, yeah, so good. I unfortunately didn't have one. I just had the usual hot dog that they have there that's a foot long. But this guy hammered it no problem. We got back to the studio and we were kind of slowing down, and he came back and we killed a song in 20 minutes, like everything. The funny thing about this guy's sessions, he tends to sort of play everything himself, and a lot of it's all instrumental music, and it's all sort of 2-part tunes. You got your A part, your B part. So what I did was I set up in the studio like the little recording stations. So I had like drums, mic for his fiddle, mic for the mandolin, a mic for the guitar, and then his bass. So he just was it was musical chairs the whole weekend. He'd play his fiddle, and then he'd go to the drums and kind of do it circular, and we'd finish it, and then we go on to the next tune. So it's 20 hours of that over the course of Friday and Saturday.
Wow. I mean, it sounds kind of how our workflow goes here, too, because we don't have a full band, so we sort of fill in.
Yeah, I like the idea of setting up the stations, so that you can kind of he's just sort of and part of it became kind of formulaic because it was all right, we did this part, let's now it's bass time, now it's drums time, now it's acoustic guitar time. The funny thing about him as a player though is he plays left-handed, but he learned with right-handed strung instruments.
Hmm. So he
So
plays with his strings strung the wrong way around.
right, yeah. And that's everything. The fiddle, the mandolin, the bass guitar, the low E is towards his toes, not towards his face. He plays everything backwards, and he plays it really, really well too. It's kind of a feat.
Probably gives him a
So,
slightly different kind of sound too.
it does, yeah. With the acoustic, especially, you notice it because but he's figured out how to strum the wrong way though, and strum like the way me and you would strum. But you do tend to get a little bit more top end on certain ones. Everything gets a little bit more jangly. Um, but yeah, he's a fairly impressive guy. His name is Ryan Keplin. Really, really good guy. So hopefully that album will be out in the next few months. We did a killer version of Jambalaya. You know that tune?
Hmm. Now, one thing on acoustic instruments to note, everyone out there, is that while with an electric guitar you can get away with stringing it backwards, because I mean, as long as it's set up right. On things like a fiddle, the bass bar inside of the fiddle is on the bass side, and the treble post is on the treble side. So if you put the strings on backwards, you're gonna seriously change how that instrument behaves. So it might actually be for his benefit that he learned it backwards.
Yeah, I think that well, he was originally a fiddle player in the first place, so I think that might be the case that he's not restringing it on purpose. It looks funny though because he'll be playing a cutaway guitar neck, and the cutaway is on the wrong end. You're not going to be playing low notes on a cutaway a lot of the times. It's the high notes, right? So, yeah, it's kind of a funny set. And this is probably the third. Yeah, it's the third record me and him have done where we did something like that, which was, you know, I've kind of figured it out as time has gone on how to do the session with him. But yeah, it's entertaining anyway. But it always turns out well, and he's super accommodating and a really nice guy. But yeah, I basically spent 14 hours in a chair on Saturday, so it was definitely Milla time when I got home after that one. Anyway, yeah. So what other topics do you have? Because I've been busier than a bugger.
Yeah, well, let's see. We've got everything is still sitting here ready to go for getting the second call-in line put together, so Colin can be on the show. I'm sure
Call in,
he'll
call in.
probably on the show before this actually goes on air, if everything goes to plan. So that'll be good. I've got a lot of crap to deal with here, just getting home before I can get to that. But yeah, as you know, there was some water in the bottom floor of the house right before we left, and I sort of lost out on a lot of recording time and production time when we were heading out the door. And so when we left, we basically said, we can't change our trip for this. Hopefully
Yeah,
it'll
no
be
kidding.
okay. But we knew it probably wouldn't. And so there we are hanging out in California. We're in we're leaving San Francisco heading towards Sacramento. And it's like 90 degrees outside, cruising down the freeway, having a good time, hanging out with some friends. And we get the news that 15 inches of snow had fallen that morning on
Oh,
Rochester. And this is just the beginning of May.
yeah.
And in a couple hours, like 2 or 3 hours, it blew the all-time record for snowfall for the entire month of May in just a couple of hours.
We got hammered too, and it was like it went from hammered snow to 2 days later plus 22 or whatever. And yeah, it's weird weather. Anyway, sorry. So it snowed like a bugger and
And
melted.
yeah, because, it's May, it gets warm enough, it's going to melt. And the problem here is that the snow melt and rain is getting in downstairs. So yeah, we came home to a lot of water.
No, no, not good. Not good at all.
So down in my shop, there was like I don't know, half an inch in the back corner, and all the carpets down there were drenched, squishy carpet. So the first thing we did when we got back was to rent an extractor. And a couple days ago, Friday, it's Monday now, so all weekend long I've been running the extractor down there, trying to get the carpets dry. So my productivity has been way down since we got home.
Ay, 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 ay. Just getting a message from Colin. He was wondering about maybe coming on later tonight to maybe do another one with you. So if you're up to it later, he might want to do something at 9 or 9:30. But so all you've been doing is basically pumping water out of the basement and blowing it out the window or something, eh?
Yeah, I've been home a couple days and I still haven't had a chance to unpack our stuff. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, man, no kidding. So what I was gonna say, I did one semi cock up on the session, and this is where labeling inputs is a really, really smart plan. I don't know if you've ever sort of ran into the things where you've inadvertently recorded the wrong microphone, but at 85% of the way through the session, I realized that the overhead mic inputs were not on channel 3 and 4 like they supposed to have been. They were actually on channels 5 and 6, which were the spot mics. So when I was recording the drum takes, I was recording the kick snare and what I thought was overhead, but what ended up being spot mics that were about 8 feet away. So I ended up with 3 room mics on the drums and a kick and snare. So even I get to kind of cock it up every once in a while. But here's the happy accident thing. It sounds friggin' amazing. So I'm just gonna go with it, basically. But it just happens like
How
that.
big
Have you
is
ever
that
done
room? How big is that room?
That's the big room. That's 30 by 30.
Yeah, that
But
would be why, yeah.
yeah, but what happened was the way I set it up was the drums were on the same set of carpet as everything else. So it was about on the one side of the 8-foot carpet was the drums, and on the other side was the mics for the fiddle and the acoustic. The thing is, they're not really set in any way. Like the heads of the mics were facing the opposite direction of the drum.
So you were
Anyway,
just getting the wall back.
right, and one was 5 feet up high off the ground, and the other one was down low, kind of where the 12th fret of an acoustic would be. But I'll send you a track later. It sounds great. I'm happy with it. So, and I think that's all that really matters in the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So shit happens, right? Yeah. So that was my situation. So so how much longer do you think you're gonna be pumping water out of the basement?
Well, we've rented it for one more night, and hopefully we can get it dry enough. The big thing that would be great is if the weather would dry outside, and then we can run the fan in there and just let the air pump the water out of there.
Open all the windows.
Yeah, that'd be a really good thing. It was raining when I got up today, though, so I don't know. We'll see. But I did, before we run out of time here, I did want to bring up my epic is the word of this episode, birthday that I had in San Francisco.
Oh, cool. Okay, what happened?
So, for the last couple of years, Addie's been asking me what I want for my birthday, what I want for Christmas, what I want for my birthday, what I want for Christmas, and I keep giving her the same answer. And it's like the last thing on my list of like personal stuff that I want. I've got a lot of like musical toys laying around, and there's a short list of things that I'd like to have in my collection that I don't have quite yet. And the problem with that kind of list is that the last couple things tend to be really expensive. So
right,
you're like, yeah, whatever. If I get it, I get it. It doesn't matter, whatever. So
yeah, I have that same list. Whoever dies with the most toys wins. is the line. Anyway.
So, it's like something fairly expensive, and I was like, skipping birthdays and Christmas presents. I just say, just save your money, put it off in a cookie jar or whatever. And if you ever have enough in there to get me the one thing I actually want, then get it. And, she's always like, yeah, well, it's kind of expensive. Oh, it's fine. No big deal.
Yeah.
So we're like, in San Francisco, and we get to the place we're staying, and there's this big box laying on the sidewalk, and I walk over it, not even paying attention. The family who we were staying with, their kids had drawn pictures all over it. It had obviously been there for a while, so I just ignored it. I got in, I'm like unpacking my stuff, getting in the guest room all ready to go, and they call me back out there, and I knew something was up.
Mm-hmm. I hate when you get that feeling, it's gonna something's happening, but you still don't know what to do about it, right?
Yeah. So there had been this big, like, giant conspiracy, and she'd actually gotten one of the things off my list, and very sneakily had it delivered there.
I was gonna say she's very sneaky.
She is. Yep. So they call me back out there, and it's some ruse about helping with breaking down the recycling to get it out to the curb or whatever.
Oh, there you go.
And I'm not buying it one bit.
Yeah. I gotta change a tire like immediately so we can go and get the chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Tricks like that don't work on me. So I go out there and I know what's up. So I open up the box, and sure enough, it's something that's been on my personal list for many, 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 many years. It's a Republic Rosolian resonator guitar.
Oh, nice.
So for those of you who don't know what that is, that's a
way to go, Abby. Sorry.
It's a bell brass body, metal body resonator guitar, but it's parlor size, so it's much smaller, and it is a very, very unique sound. And if you're looking for that unattainable Delta Blues slide guitar, that is an excellent place to start. Because man,
yeah. And that's is that then technically considered a 3/4 size guitar or no?
It's technically considered a parlor size guitar.
Right.
So the scale length is shorter, and the body is much, much smaller, which is, of course, what gives it a very distinct tone.
So we need a track like ASAP, basically.
Yeah, well, that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up, because Republic was bought by, some American folklore company or something like that, and so they're having their guitars assembled overseas now, and of course that stinks. But one of the problems with that is that they set them up in a climate that's very hot and humid. So when they do all the measurements for how high the strings set off the fretboard and all that, they're doing it in a climate where that guitar is never going to be played.
A wet ass climate. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So
I have this happens a lot in the studio, especially in the winter when it's really dry. Like it's really dry in Manitoba and in the house and stuff like that. And I always tell guys, don't even bother tuning your guitar in the control room. Tune it in the big room, because there's a temperature difference, a different size room. Like it makes a huge difference, Anyway, sorry. So
it does, and that's like after guitar is fairly well set up for the environment, you'll have those kinds of problems. But this one, because it's such a huge difference, that it was literally 3 or 4 times higher off the fretboard than it was supposed to be.
Wow.
Now, normally, that's the sort of thing where, I just bring it in the shop downstairs and fix it, but I'm at somebody else's house on the other side of the country.
Yeah. It's almost, to me, seems like take it to the tech, but yeah, okay.
Well, I am the tech, so...
Right. Yeah, well, sometimes it's nice to let the tech do it, but okay, anyway, so what happened?
Yeah, it's nice that you have a tech that you can hand it to, but
I don't have a tech. I do have techs, but I actually have a conversation about that afterwards. Anyway, okay, so sorry, what happened?
So I've got my birthday present, and I've literally been looking forward to having one of these things for years, and I'm trying to play it sitting out in the sunshine in San Francisco. and the intonation is just completely screwed.
Right.
Because
Totally.
when they're that high, I mean, it throws everything out of whack. So I bring it into his little shop because he's like a electronics prototyping guy.
Mhm.
It's Joe Grand. Anybody who watches Discovery has probably seen the show Prototype This.
Mhm.
He's one of the cast of that show, and he does a lot of like high-end
Yeah, I think I've
hacking.
actually seen him a few times.
Probably,
Yeah.
he's out there, he's around. So anyway, he's my buddy that I stay with when I'm out there. So he's got a fairly decent electronics laboratory in his office there, but it's not really set up for woodworking or anything like that. So I go in there, I'm like, Joe, do you have any sandpaper? He's like, what? What do you need sandpaper for? I'm like, do you have any 60 grit sandpaper?
Uh-oh.
He's like, I don't know. Let me look. And he pulls open his big tool chest and he actually finds some.
Oh,
This is
nice.
awesome. So
Yeah.
I'm in there taking apart my guitar like 10 minutes after I got it.
This sounds like me the first day I got my RC car. That was exactly what I did. Didn't even play with it, didn't run it around a track, nothing. Took it apart to see what happened.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like retard. Anyway, yeah. Okay, so what
There's
did you
certain
say?
kinds of people in the world who the first thing they're going to do when you give them a nice present is they're going to take it apart, right?
Oh, let me see. We were actually, I was having this conversation with my wife because you know how they always say that a girl marries a guy that's similar to her dad. I've
Okay.
heard this conversation before, right? Or
Sure.
this argument. And so on the way home last night, because we went out for Mother's Day and went and seen her mom and dad, and I was like, "Am I like him? Because I don't know if I am, you know." And so she was sort of mentioning, a few little things that could be construed as me being similar to him. And I just realized just now that he is also one of those guys that will automatically open it up and take a look at it. If he buys a new fridge, new dishwasher, new anything, he's automatically going to take a look at it. I mean, he's a bit of a more of an electronics guy and like a tool guy and stuff. Like he buys tools just to keep them uh, or to have them. You know, it's like, oh, do you have this extremely obscure tool? Yes, I do. I have 4 different versions of it. You know what I mean? And I'm just realizing, like, yeah, I think I am at similar anyway. But I was trying to have the argument yesterday of the fact that I wasn't. Um, so back to the sandpapering.
Yeah, so the way that a biscuit resonator works is that you've got your strings are going over the top of your bridge, and your bridge sits in a wooden puck.
Right.
Okay, the biscuit,
Ooh, like
and
a hot
not quite as thick, but about
dog? Okay.
that size around, right?
Right. Okay.
And
Still the same.
the aluminum spun cone is screwed into the bottom of that puck, and it sits down in a circular seating, right? And that seals the inside of the guitar from the front, right? And you've got the sound holes, and the sound holes are connected acoustically to the back side of the cone. So these things act as a mechanical amplifier, essentially, but they change the way that the uh, the vibrations work their way through, so it has that weird metallic sort of fun sound to it as
Yeah.
well. So to change the action on this guitar, it was really bad to the point where you might consider going at the truss rod, but that's not necessarily ever a good idea, folks.
No. Yeah.
Don't touch that. If you can do it any other way, don't mess with the truss rod. So I looked at the nut, and the nut looked like it was fine. The string height up on that top end looks okay. So what I did is I took off the cover plate, obviously destrung it first. I took off the cover plate, took the cone out, unscrewed the cone from the puck, and then took the bridge out of the puck. And then, before I took it out, I drew a line so I knew what flat had been originally.
Mhm.
Took it out and then sanded down as much off of the bottom of the bridge as I dared to.
I have to do the exact same thing on my acoustic. When I bought my acoustic, and I wonder if it might be the same problem as what you had. when I bought it and it was in the shop, which means it would have been in our climate for a little while, it was nice to play. And now it's gotten way high off the strings, which I'm not opposed to. But it's getting kind of hard to play now. And I've actually got a crack in the neck where the neck meets the back end of the back end of the neck. Like it's a glue-on neck to the body kind of a thing.
Mm.
And there's a little crack there. And yeah, I think maybe sanding the bridge down might be the ticket. Actually, I have an interesting story about a Telecaster after we're done having this conversation about the guitar. So, um, okay, so you sanded it down. Did you even get a chance to play it before you started
Yeah,
digging
a
with it, or
little
did
bit,
you?
but it, it was only good for slide, right? Because the
Right. Yeah.
intonation on the frets was completely wrong,
Right.
and like painfully wrong, right?
Oh,
It hurt to play,
not correct.
and it hurt to hear. So
Yeah, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. Oh, boy. Anyway,
yeah, so I took like off the bottom of that bridge, I took probably 3/8, not 3/8, somewhere right underneath a quarter of an inch. I literally took off that much material.
wow,
It was seriously high, and
wow.
put it back together. And I was like, okay, if I go too far, it'll be okay because I can shim underneath the bridge in that little pocket, and it'll be fine. Some folks will put sandpaper in there just so that it can't sink down or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was okay if I went a little too far, but it turned out that I didn't, and it could actually go a little bit farther, but I didn't want to risk it while I was there. So I put it
Well,
back together, strung it up, and the action is now much, much better. But it came with heavy strings, and I don't like heavy strings. I like very light strings. So
yeah. Okay. Two quick questions. What gauge of strings do you usually use on acoustic then?
depends on the guitar, but
Yeah.
I tend to like for my acoustics, I like a medium, and for my
Okay.
cigar box guitars, I like a lighter, like a very light, because they got that sort of banjo-y jangle anyway.
Yeah.
Goes well with that. I've
Oh yeah.
tried all different kinds of gauges on my wood body resonator.
What about the down electro? Or
The
sorry,
Dan Electro, I've got medium gauge strings on that, but it's
like
just
10?
running like steel acoustic strings at the moment. So I actually just like 2 days ago ordered new strings. That's actually Addie's guitar, and I
Yeah.
found some Black Beauties that she's gonna give a go. They're black coated electric guitar strings, so we'll see how those work.
I need to get some of those glow in the dark strings that are killer. Um, well, for the show, but I've
Right.
always played 10s and I used to play 11s and I used to play heavy to medium strings on acoustic, but I'm starting to find that my fingers are getting really bad. Um, like I got thumb stickage happening where I get the, thumbs up thing and I have to think about it for a bit before it'll move. Um, this is what happens when you play guitar for 15 years. Anyway, so I'm slowly considering moving to lighter gauge strings for acoustics and for my electric, but it's the whole you get used to playing on tans and then all of a sudden you can bend past the neck kind of thing. So I have to get reused to playing on lighter strings, which I'm hoping it's either that or I got to go buy a Fender Mustang with a skinnier neck so my fingers aren't as much trouble as they used to be. Um, anyway, I was going to mention I remember doing a session with a guitar player, and he was doing it was a country session, and he was using one guitar, which normally with a bigger budget you'd have a few different acoustic guitars, but all of the rhythm parts he did all of them with like whatever the light strings are on acoustics, I guess nines, with a light pick, so you get the nice jangle and then restrung the guitar mid session and it had nice still the strings were still good springy to do all the leads with 11s and thicker picks just to get the right tone kind of thing, which is very like that's the smartest way to do it to get the right kind of gut feeling out of it. But that's sort of the lengths that some of these sort of session guys will go. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
I would recommend to those guys bring 2 guitars, but hey, whatever.
Yeah. So in the end, you managed to sand down the bridge, and what I was going to mention too, when you were sanding it down, and you said that you went as far as you could, and then sort of stopped because there's going to be a climate change once it settles and it's at your place for a bit too,
Yep.
right?
I
Yeah.
knew because I was in San Francisco and it's more humid there that I should probably not go, dial it in all the way because it's just going to change again anyway. So I left it a little high, and also it's going to change a bit when I put the lighter strings on there because I don't play heavies. So
Yeah, it makes a big difference. So I'm getting a homemade cajon.
okay,
You know what those are? Colin actually has been building some, and I think for all the help that you haven't really gotten anything awesome out of the deal yet, but I think for all the help that we've given him the last little while, he's been starting to build homemade cajones, and he had one that he built had his first prototype. He put a bit of a crack in, but he that's the one that I'm gonna actually end up getting apparently. But he emailed me the other day and he said, "So I'm trying out stains on this cajon I built, and I just want to know, pick number 1 or 2." As far as I guess what stain color he was going to go with, he didn't tell me what colors. He just said pick number 1 or 2 because he was doing that. So I picked number 2 because I'm really into the even numbers, as it were. But I guess for helping out with his mixes and giving him some ideas, a little while ago he sent me a mix of one tune, and it was sort of nice little straightforward kind of country rock tune, I guess per se. And he says, "Well, here, give me some mix, thoughts or whatever. I should send you the track to it, but give me some mixed thoughts on it." So I said, "Well, the one thing I would think you could maybe try for giggles is make a copy of the overhead tracks, and then what I tend to do sometimes if I don't like toms is I make a copy of the overhead tracks and then EQ, some low end in, and then cut out everything but the tom hits so that you get kind of like a pseudo tom stereo track out of it and like gated or whatever." I just said for giggles, and then he emails me back and he said, "For giggles, you knew that was going to work," kind of thing. So anyway, I guess it ended up working in this mix. So, but yeah, that's what his little project has been. He's been working on homemade cajon, so I'm excited.
yeah, making
Yeah.
your own instruments is always fun.
Yeah, I know, and that's actually I'd like you guys to get into the discussion of sort of how to make a cajon because I'm sure, well, I'd be interested in knowing about it, and I'm sure you would probably end up building one after the fact. My dog is barking at me again. So how are we doing on time? Do you want to keep going here, or do you want to? What do you want to do? We're at
Well,
5 minutes.
we're pretty good for time here. I think it'd be a good spot to cut it off on.
Okay.
I know all you listeners out there want us to keep yapping, but you'll have to wait till next Friday. You
I
can
agree.
find this show every week at patchbay.tv. Releases are going to be a lot more regular now that I'm back in the studio. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We really appreciate it. That's it for us. We'll see you guys next week.